that same period, you had an impact on rural life from various federal laws, Voting Rights Act, Public Accommodation Act. Just about the time the Public Accommodation Act was about to pass, there went the flag up on the State House. And so folks in the rural areas got affected in a way that some of them didn't even know in terms of policy toward their well-being. And so some of these folks had been affected by those policies of national policy as well as what was happening in terms of land development in the Sea Islands. You see, some of the landowners at one time got tax breaks for agriculture. And in the 1980s, the state decided that instead of giving people agricultural break for 5 acres, we're going to actually make sure that the minimum is 10 acres and they must be contiguous. So that drove some people off of the land. Eventually, I think that is being changed now to the extent that they're asking for $1,000 gross income from farming, and therefore you get an ag break. And so that's the kind of policy that will be more helpful to people in the rural areas that are interested in farming. But the world has changed since the 1970s, when folks were actually farming and forming cooperatives and thinking that farming, rural life was a viable kind of venture. We've had overgrazing. We've got water problems. We've got, species being lost worldwide and in this country. And so we've got quite a challenge in terms of protecting our environment, which is mostly now the rural part of the world. And so we are challenged to have a sustainable economy in the rural areas. In spite of the effort of trying to get the rural economy going. When I talked to Charles Lane, he said to me, we know that that's a challenge in terms of developing a rural economy. Folks want jobs, and as soon as they get an opportunity, they go to where the jobs are, and most of the jobs are in the cities. But in the last Child in the Woods, remember that book? Everybody read it? One thing I got from that book, it says cities have limits of human capacity, but memories of the rural life shapes a new life, hopefully a life that will contribute to preserving the rural life. And so those memories of rural living is something that's going to shape us, going to help us shape our thinking on how we can preserve the rural life and the rural landscape and the rural economy. Hopefully we can make it a sustainable economy. Thank you.
both of our speakers, and they're here to answer questions.
Well, certainly developing a sustainable urban economy is going to take money. A lot of it.
Rural economy.
Rural economy. What did I say?
Urban economy.
Sorry. And that definitely is one of the big problems. And in some of the literature that we were given to read, it talked about an organization in North Carolina. I'm looking for the model is what I'm getting at. I'm sort of saying, you know, where is there a somewhat similar situation, certainly not same history, but and how is their success and how are they doing it? And so I mean, I'm asking it of both of you. Is the model this organization in North Carolina that some of us read about, which gets a lot of legislative money, government money, to develop the rural areas, good, you know, sustainable business?
I'm not familiar with that particular model, but there are semblance of models that require some investment from government for infrastructure, for example, but also for, you know, the first small farms program was in South Carolina, started in the 1980s. It's just that we never got any help. I mean, it was a nice model where you said, you know, you could, you know, diversify your farm, do U-pick so that you don't have to pay for labor. You can pay for whatever you get. If you pick and get leaves, you get your weight, and you also send it. But that was a model that we tried at Penn Center. It's taken on fairly well by a few farmers in that area, where you just have people come and pick tomatoes. You can do your strawberries, greens, and folks don't mind coming and getting their own pick. U-pick has been very successful over the last 20 years. I don't know what North Carolina model does.
Well, I can't explain it in detail. Just that it is they have become this organization has become a conduit for funds that do come down to them to then pass through to other or smaller organizations on the ground in the rural areas to develop business.
A couple of things. One, you know, the Charleston Farmers Market on Saturday. They have one rule there that everything that's sold must be produced within South Carolina. And so it provides a market, a larger market, in a way for rural and urban communities to connect. And I expect many of you have been to the Charleston Farmers Market on Saturday on Marion Square. And, you know, it's a crowded area, and people are going, and it's provided also a great cultural mix, but it also provides a market. And then this new state farmers market in Columbia will expand that. You have McLeod Farms over in the PD, which is serving as something as a model. I think that the potential, at least, is for that to be replicated in many parts of the state, where it's larger than most. They produce most of their own produce. You know, if you go to